Hi, this is Geeks a Week's Whoosh.
This is Zach.
And I'm Andrew, and the following podcast contains spoilers for Game of Thrones up to season 6.
So, Game of Thrones starts next weekend, but we're going to save that for the end because we'll be talking about that quite a bit. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is something that actually Zach reminded me of last night, but also kind of came up with E3 as well with Microsoft's announcement of the Xbox One X console is resolution and frame rate and the buzzwords and sort of the connotations that go with them. So with the Xbox One X, there's a decent number of games that will probably run at native 4K, maybe 60 FPS, most will probably be 30. The problem that I have with this is that, okay, it's 4K, and that's fine. Even if it's true 4K, that's fantastic. But there's more to what a game looks like than just the number of pixels that represent the picture. And this is something Zach pointed out last night. We were playing Master Chief Collection. It does work. We were playing Combat Evolved, and he made the comment, "Oh no, these graphics." I think is what you said, right? Because
Something like that.
because you can tell it's an older game. And I said, right, but it's running at 1080p 60 FPS, which is true. So that right there kind of shows that, all right, that's fine, that if you want the game to be like that, but what sort of sacrifices do you as a developer have to make to get the game to run at that when it comes to the actual graphical fidelity of it? Because, Combat Evolved clearly looks like it's a 15-plus-year-old game. It doesn't. I mean, when someone said 1080p 60, and you say, well, here's a game doing that, I don't think that's what they meant. But it's not technically wrong. And it's something that's kind of bothered me ever since I really started getting in the games. But even more so, especially when it was sort of a way to knock the Xbox One console as it's no good because, oh god, there's like 2,000 less pixels. You literally would not be able to tell.
Well, speaking of you talking about the developers, don't they have to make a game for the Xbox One X and the older model too now? If they have to run it at 4K on the new Xbox and a smaller resolution on the older one?
Well, it depends. Andrew will probably have a bit more in-depth knowledge when it comes to this.
No, for the most part, they'd probably just check if they're on the Xbox One S or X, and if they have like the updated version of the game for that console to take advantage of the hardware, then they'll run that if they have the Xbox One X.
Because I get what Zach's saying, because that's the advantage of a console versus a PC. Is when you're a developer, no offense to Nintendo, but there's not a lot of third-party games on there. You're developing for two systems. You know the inside down to the very core, no pun intended, everything about that system. When you make it for PC, there's dozens of processors out there. There's dozens of graphics cards that someone could be running. There's dozens of types of RAM, motherboards, all kinds of stuff. Overclocked. You don't have a set hardware that you're working with. So it has to work in a huge range of systems. Whereas when you're coding for a console, it's one thing. You know exactly how fast the processor is. You know exactly how much RAM you have, right down to the byte. So I think what Zach, if I'm getting this right, you're wondering, okay, well, what's different with this with a PC? Because now you're coding for two different systems.
More or less, yeah. I mean, there's obviously better hardware on the Xbox. It's basically a different console to a developer trying to make a game that runs on it.
Well, I think the biggest thing
right?
is
Or it's mostly just upgraded, right?
Well, particularly with something like a graphics card, I don't do any kind of development programming. Andrew, maybe you want to weigh in first before I make myself sound like an idiot.
Well, they don't. Hardware-specific things aren't done so much anymore. Like with really old consoles, like the fourth, fifth generation ones, they would do little hardware tricks to get the most out of the game, out of the hardware they could. But now they have so much power, it's not even worth it to do that little thing to get an extra.
Well, I'm just talking about
tiny bit
things.
of performance.
I'm just talking about things like, okay, you have a processor that takes X number of cycles or whatever to perform this particular action, but now you have a processor that's even better. And right, I get what you're saying with the older ones where it was much more, like you said, you had to do tricks and all kinds of weird things. It's actually really impressive what some of the things they had to do was to get games to just function properly. Whereas now, like you stated, it's all basically the software. But when you know, okay, I have, especially with parallelization now with multiple cores. There's 8 cores in the Xbox One and the PS4. There's 8 cores in the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. So you have this, okay, well now you can parallelize it, or not paralyze it, Jesus Christ, parallelize it. But I think I get what Zach's saying is, okay, well now do they basically have to make 2 versions of the game? And I think more so with this, especially because it's literally the same architecture, just more power. I think it scales way easier. Whereas I've been reading stuff where developers are, okay, here's the Xbox One X development kit. And within 2 days, they have the game running on it absolutely fine. I think in 3 hours, they were able to get Forza Horizon 3 to run on there at 4K 60 FPS. And that's it, they're done. That's it. It took them 3 hours, and the game's ported. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different based on the title. Racing games probably are going to be a little bit easier. But just the fact that they're able to do that within, just a few days. It's not like this is a months-long, multi-person team thing that needs to be accomplished. So, especially with it being Microsoft and sort of the way that they have everything written for their consoles, with it being more unified with the PC architecture as well, I think it's going to be much easier in that they go, okay, is this an Xbox One or Xbox One S? Okay, here's what you have available to run, and the game runs on that. Oh, look, you have an Xbox One X. Well, here, now we'll just turn everything up. And I honestly, I think that's really all that they have to do.
Well, it seems like a lot of developers are just targeting the Xbox One still. And obviously the X isn't out yet, so.
Well, yeah, and
but, a lot of games they'd have, they'd lower the frame rate or the resolution if it gets too intensive.
Mm-hmm. So you'll see less of that.
Yeah, it'd probably be none of that if they're targeting the Xbox One. Assuming they're not shitty developers.
Do you think that this is what we can expect in the future forever now? Just a console comes out, then a couple years later, console 2.0 comes out before they release the next upgraded true console?
I think so. At least from Microsoft's perspective, I think this is kind of almost treating it like a cell phone. Like you buy it, use it for a couple years. All the things will work, but of course the newer one is better in some aspects. And I don't know if we'll have this where it's such a huge leap. Like we're talking, honestly, wouldn't be surprised if they do one like every other year where it comes out and it's a 20% increase instead of like a 50 or 60% increase like we have now. But I would not be surprised if Microsoft does something like that. The only problem I see with it is, at least now, or it has been for a while, when Microsoft and Sony sell a console, it costs them more money to make that than it does as a consumer to buy it. They're losing money. The PS3, I think, was losing like $250 when it first launched per unit sold. And I think that is part of the reason why the last generation was so long. Because there was such a huge discrepancy in how much it costs to make these consoles. Plus, again, that doesn't include any kind of research and development or anything like that goes on with it. That's just straight up the price for the parts. You got to actually, make the software and put them all together. So I think that's part of the reason why it was so long. So I will see how that works because the Xbox One X is costing Microsoft way more than $500 per unit to put together. No matter how many they sell. I'm sure for at least the first several months, if not a year, I've
heard $900.
Well, honestly, that one surprised me, especially with that vapor chamber cooling. Excuse me. That's like cutting edge on enthusiast computer parts right now. And this, obviously, this is an enthusiast console, but I'm sure PC Master Race is just spinning that I said that right now. Enthusiast console. But
You're
I
like the
will.
ultimate peasant.
But we'll see, and I think this is kind of Microsoft testing it to see how well people would be with that. It depends on what the price points are. If it's something I would do, I certainly, if they come out with one every other year, no way, no way. That's way too expensive. Every 4 or 5 years, okay, maybe. And we'll see, because I don't even have a 4K TV yet. I know they said obviously the game's going to look better, but I don't really see a point in doing that if I don't have something that's going to take full advantage of it from a visual aspect. But we'll see. It depends. I mean, $500, that's not bad for something that can do that. My computer can't even do that, and that was way more expensive.
People have been predicting the end of the console cycle for a long time, at least the last few generations, since the Xbox 360 and PS3 came out. But
Well,
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking that something like this, there's a lot of momentum behind the console generation cycle, and it'll take a long time to break.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially like I said, because they lose money on that. Now they obviously start turning a profit not too long after, and then of course it ends up making them money. They make most of the money off of the software sales and licensing fees. But you're right. It's a huge sink every time one of those comes out. Now Nintendo, I think, wasn't it the Switch that was sold at a loss for the first time?
I'm not entirely sure on that.
Yeah, Nintendo hasn't been selling their consoles at a loss. I don't know
Right.
about Switch, but
So Nintendo's doing it a little bit different, but honestly, I feel like they're sort of like the second one. Like, people either get a PlayStation or Xbox, and then they probably pick up a Nintendo console after a year, a couple years after that, and that's fine because they tend to be much cheaper, and it, especially with the online capability, it doesn't have the same grab, I guess, for it. I mean, I'm not saying the games are bad, but it seems like people would rather on a Friday night sit down with their friends and play Halo or COD or Battlefield than they would like to sit down by themselves and play Breath of the Wild. I'm not saying the game's bad, just it has a completely different, sort of audience it's going after.
Well, I think they need to come out with some more friend games, like Splatoon's, I'm sure is pretty good, and then whatever, but they can't just keep reselling Mario Kart 8 and expect to have a bunch of people, a bunch of friends, be excited to get together and, play a Nintendo until like the new Smash or
Right.
a new Mario Party, who knows, comes out. But yeah, I think they're pretty good at moving consoles, but they're not as good at selling multiple games for a system as the other two.
Well, wasn't it for a while? We're still talking about
Breath of the
resolution here, but they didn't they sell more copies of Breath of the Wild than Switch? Well, I don't understand
in North
why.
America, yes.
Oh, okay, so that's what it was.
Attach rate was like 120%.
Because I don't understand how they keep not anticipating the demand for things. Like this, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System got launched, or announced, I should say, like 2 weeks ago. It went in for sale and it was sold out in like 6 minutes. You will not be, and that's it, they're done. I don't understand why they can't seem to, or just keep making them. They don't have the parts. Make the parts. It's not like all of the matter in the universe is gone.
Well, I'm hoping they learn their lesson by the time they do the N64, because
Well, they won't.
the SNES had some cool games, but they should just do the virtual console for the Switch, and just because you can digitally download those games. I mean, there's no need for a demand of physical copies. They should just focus on that more than all these 30 games pre-installed game
Well, I think the appeal of that
boxes like the NES and the SNES.
I think the appeal of that's more having the classic controller.
Right, which you can
Sure,
buy.
that's true.
But and this is something, because there's games I would like to play that I can't, because you can't buy them for the original system, and who knows, you're buying something that's probably been passed down to 15 people, and Nintendo doesn't seem to want my money because they won't make a console that I'm able to buy from not eBay for $700. So I guess I just have to emulate it, because they don't want my money. They don't seem to care. So they won't care if I give them zero money for the game. That's the way that I look at this.
Well, what game are you talking about?
Just it'd be nice. Star Fox, that would be cool. I'd like to play Star Fox. What else?
Gotta be on one of the virtual consoles, doesn't it?
But I don't know if Star Fox 2 is, because isn't that's kind of like one
Star
of the
Fox 2 never got released.
Right. Well, it's coming out.
On the Isn't it on the SNES?
Yes.
The remastered.
Yes, it is. Yes.
An unreleased game, so they really should. That's basically like releasing a new game then.
And
so they really should, make more units if they're selling out. Because that's all they have to do to stop scalpers is just keep up with the demand and sell it.
But they don't care
for themselves.
They don't care, and I don't know why they don't, because every time the scalper sells that's money that Nintendo could have got that they won't. So they obviously have established time and time again, at least within the last several years, doing stuff like this with the NES Classic. They do not care about getting their customers money. I honestly don't know why they don't just give the stuff away for free. You would generate so much good PR. That's basically what, from their perspective, they're not getting any money off of this.
Well, the scalper bought it.
Well, right, but they buy it for $60, and then the scalper turns around and sells it for $400. So right there, if someone's willing to buy that for $400, obviously that means Nintendo could sell it for $400 and make an even bigger profit. But again, they don't care. And it's weird to see a company not care about making money. It's really odd.
Isn't scalping actually illegal, or is that just like ticket
No,
sales?
no. What you can't do is, when it comes to ticket scalping, you can't sell the ticket for less than the box price at the venue. I can go online right now and buy a ticket for something and then sell it to somebody else for literally whatever price I want. What I can't do is buy the ticket and then sit at the venue and sell it for less than what the actual official price is for the ticket. But scalping like this, no, you can buy something and sell it for whatever you want. You buy the thing, you own it. I can buy a watch for $200 and sell it to someone for $10,000 if I want. That's totally fine. At least in the U.S., I don't know how things function in other countries. I assume the laws would be at least fairly similar, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
Going back, I can see why Nintendo would see a benefit in this sort of exclusivity when they sell the amiibos and stuff like that. But when they're selling their gaming hardware, I don't really see that they get a benefit from it.
I mean, just imagine if you went on to like the Wii U or Switch now, Virtual Console, and there were only X copies of, I don't even know what they have on there, some game, let's say Super Mario Bros. 2, and that's it, and they're sold out. I mean, can you imagine what that would be like to go, okay, company, I want to give you money, like Francis did, print the product so I can buy the product. I think this is a perfect example of that, where it's like I said before, they don't seem to care about money. They don't. They make an X number. They know they're going to sell more than that because they've done this at least once before, so they have no excuse this time. Well, we didn't anticipate demand, so you can't make more of them. That's my question. Like, imagine if Microsoft said, all right, we're going to come out with the Xbox One X. We expect 7 million people to buy it in the first year based on how the Xbox One sold. We are only going to make 1 million of them, and then we're going to be done. I mean, just how stupid would that be?
Right.
It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. Or if they brought back the original Xbox. I mean...
Which they are, kind of.
Well, with backwards compatibility, but I mean the actual console. They're bringing back the Duke. Now, the Duke is going to... And I don't know why anybody likes that controller. That is the stupidest looking controller I've ever seen.
The original Xbox controller?
Yes.
Yeah, that thing was huge. It looked like a Frisbee.
And so I can see something like that because that's actually a fundamentally bad product. I mean, it's so bad they came up with a completely new design for it. So that tells you right there that it's not good. It's not like they just made a better version. They completely...
It's not hugely different. 360 controller.
No, I'm talking about basically the second generation original Xbox controller versus the very first launch one, commonly called the Duke. It's way smaller. The buttons are in a way different position. If I'm not mistaken, aren't the buttons like in like a like offset, like they're almost tilted a couple degrees compared to what they are on every other Xbox controller, where they like, now they're in sort of like the square pattern, aren't they, like tilted like 15 degrees, so they're on an angle? Or maybe, I don't know. I've never actually used it, but I've seen it, and I can tell you that is the dumbest thing ever.
Oh no, it's been a while since I held a original Xbox controller. I'm talking over 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Whenever it was out. I mean, '01.
Like, yeah, it came out in 2001, and the 360 came out in 2005.
So yeah, over 10 years it's been since I've held one. But yeah, it's not good.
We actually got really off topic. But that's fine, because going back to the whole resolution thing, I don't even know what got us on Nintendo, actually. But that's fine. It's okay. Rambling sometime is good.
We have the recording.
Well, but I mean, anyways, so going back to the resolution and frame rate, it's what are sort of graphical fidelity are you sacrificing in order to get it to run at 1080p 60 or 4K 3060, whatever? Because like we mentioned with the Halo Combat Evolved, the game does not look good. But if you look at something like The Witcher, that's 900p max, 30 FPS. I don't think there's anybody in the world that would tell you that The Witcher 3 looks worse than Halo Combat Evolved in the MCC.
Well, some people are crazy.
But it's because it's buzzwords. I don't know if people really are that stupid. I guess you almost have to think like another layer down into it, where okay, you got to think about the things a bit. But it's okay. What are you giving up to get me this 1080p 60?
Right. They should focus more on how the graphics actually look and how the assets look in the game versus the resolution. But you're right. It's a buzzword. They can slap 1080p. They can slap 4K on a title, and it just generates some buzz about it because it's a high resolution.
Right. It's a big number.
Well,
Good
and it's
put it on the box.
And this is another thing that kind of came out with this generation, is that it didn't feel like as big of a leap going from PS2 to PS3. Felt bigger than PS3 to PS4, even though it's not, because you're starting to get to the point where there's diminishing returns on every sort of graphical fidelic increase. I don't know how to phrase that.
I think that the graphics aren't going to get much better. It's just it's things like virtual reality that's going to make games revolutionize. Because 4K, I mean, your eyes can't even see much better than that. I mean,
right.
If you start going up to 8K games, I mean, they're not really going to look that much better. I mean, they will, but you're not going to be able to tell there's going to be a huge improvement. It's going to be things like how good can a VR game look. That's going to be graphical innovation from now on, which I saw some demos for Unreal 4, and those look pretty photorealistic, some of those environments that people have made in that engine.
And I think that's another one, like, once you get to... I think with that one, sort of once you hit 4K, you're kind of good, because what you're looking at is going to be much closer to your eyes. So when you're looking at a screen, it's a little bit different, because, I mean, I'm sure most people are probably sitting a good 10 feet, 8 feet away from their TV. Whereas with this... Huh?
Be safe.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, it depends, because... I don't know with TVs now what exactly causes the eye strain. As long as you're looking away from the screen, it's the same thing with a computer monitor at work. Like, isn't it like the 20-20-20 rule? Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds, something like that. So
eye strain is primarily like having a high contrast between light and dark. Like if your monitor's a lot brighter than your room, then.
But how is that true with theaters? Because theaters, the only thing that's lit is the exit signs, which make basically no light. And the screen.
The projection isn't that bright either.
Well, I know, but I'm talking about the difference between them. I mean, it's almost pitch black in there versus the only thing that's lighting it up is a screen. I mean, otherwise, I don't know if the screen was off, if you would be able to see to leave. If the exit signs weren't lit up, I don't know if you'd be able to see the stairs to walk out. So that's
why they have to have those like walkway lights, because you're right, it would be pitch black.
Right, that's what I'm saying is I don't know if that's the truth, because then you'd think people going to the theater, like, everybody would be having problems when they left.
Well, theater, on a projection screen, you're looking at direct light.
I guess that's true.
It's reflected off of the screen, so yeah, you're
But
looking
is
at
that-
basically secondary light.
Right, but is that any different? I mean, a photon is a photon is a photon. It doesn't matter where it came from. I don't know. We're
Well,
getting into
sure,
physics.
but-
That's something later. What were you saying, Andrew?
Well, you get fewer photons if you're looking at a reflection.
Well, right, but again, we're not talking about the number. You mentioned the contrast, the difference between basically the surrounding area and the screen, and it doesn't matter if that light has bounced off of 500 billion mirrors.
Right.
If it's
the point is the contrast is less in a theater.
I guess I'll have to pay attention to see, because maybe there are some. I know some theaters have like really dim lights that run along the side, so that might be part of it. But I've always thought that, because the way I understand it is, when your eyes have a like the default focus is infinity, and to actually look at something close by, that's where you get the muscle strain, because it's got to compress your irises or your lens. So I think that's why, at least from my understanding of it, is what causes the issues with looking at screens all day, is because your muscles are, I mean, just imagine flexing your arms for 8 hours straight. It's going to hurt. Now do that every day for 40, 50 plus hours a week, maybe even more. That your arms are going to get tired.
Yeah. Well, with different contrast, you'll have to, or with different light levels, if you glance off the screen, then you have to open your iris up to see.
Right.
And that repeated flexing, that causes
Yeah.
strain.
Oh, I see. Well, then I guess just don't look at your phone. Look at the screen. Classic
Well, the phone will be
Andrew.
even brighter.
So, yeah, just don't sit too close to the TV. But anyways, getting back to with the virtual reality thing, where, I mean, that's right in front of your face, right? The screen's sitting inches away. So it's even closer than most people would have a computer screen. So I think, like, once you get to 4K and then after that, it should be fine. But the biggest thing is going to be the frame rate, because you're going to need a minimum of 60, and you're probably going to need something much higher than that just to give it that fluid sort of, because you want it to basically look like real life. You know, obviously a game on a screen is a little bit different, but with virtual reality, I mean, it's supposed to look, you know, like you're there.
Real.
Yeah, so you're going to have it insanely fluid everything. And the only reason I see that not catching on is just because of the huge increase in development costs to do something like that. Because not only do you have higher resolution assets, which take more time and effort to make, you have to make the game run better, because now again you're talking a minimum of 60, probably closer to 120 or maybe even 144. So you're going to spend a lot of time actually getting the game to run properly. Plus, again,
Plus, you have to make 2 screens.
Huh?
Plus, you have to make 2 screens.
Well, right, yes, but I'm talking about the headsets. I mean, I'm assuming the prices are going to come down on that, but I'm just assuming that this is all going to be.
No, the game has to render 2 frames.
Oh, yeah.
every frame.
Sorry, I didn't get what you're saying, but yes, that's true too. Yeah, so you're basically rendering 2 games at the same time. That's hard for a lot of computers to do, especially at, you know, super high resolution and stupidly high frame rate. You're going to have a beast of a computer at least for the next probably 10, maybe even 15 years before this becomes sort of the mainstream default way to view stuff like that. Whereas like right now when you're playing on like a computer game, it's the default thing's going to be 1080p 60 FPS. That's sort of the kind of the benchmark everybody sets, and then tweaks settings accordingly. But to get to something like that, it's going to take a while before the price becomes down to where your average person can afford it.
That's probably why VR games are so short right now.
Well, yeah, because
They're basically just a demo for what the future of VR gaming is going to be.
But I mean, look how long it takes to make most games. Most games run on like a 3-year development cycle, and it's
Looking at you, COD.
Well, but it's different because there's different
They
developers
have 3
working
different
on it.
studios.
Right, it's the same thing with Assassin's Creed. It's not like they were pumping out an Assassin's Creed game in 12 months. No, they have Ubisoft had a ton of studios, which might have led to some of the problems that those games had later on. But they were
the people in the credits could found a nation.
right. Yeah, exactly. So I think something like that is fine, but it takes a while to make a game. I mean, Halo's a perfect example. Bungie was one of the biggest developers when they were doing Halo. Actually, I think once Halo 2 was done, they started Halo 3. They had like probably the third or fourth largest, at least in the U.S. So they were a huge developer, and it still took them 3 years to make the game. Same thing with Reach. So, and 343 is another big one. I don't know the exact numbers, but every time you look at employees at a thing, some game developer, it's getting bigger, and a lot of it's increases in artists, because it takes longer to make each asset now, and people always want more of them. You need more grass, you need more trees, you need more spell effects, you need more smoke effects, all that stuff.
Which is fine. I mean, it makes the game look pretty. Jobs. It's all good all around.
But it's a perfect example is like when you're tweaking your settings for a game. Okay, so you want it to run at a particular resolution. We'll just stick with 1080p 60. Okay, but what setting do you have to turn down to get that? You know what? Can you have shadows at max? Probably not. Can you have the vegetation have a huge view distance? Probably not, or it's not going to run well. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to wait and see what they actually look like before it's. Oh, look, it's 4K. Well, all right, but again, what does the rest of it look like? Because if there's no grass, it's not gonna matter. Assuming the game is supposed to have grass in
it. Individual grass physics.
Well, they
That's
have.
the future.
I think like Oblivion. I think the grass could there were chunks, but it could move in different directions. That would have been a game.
Games have that.
Huh?
A lot of games have that.
Well, yeah, but I just bring it up as an example. But yeah, I get what Zach's talking about with basically each individual blade. But you got some things like that I don't think are ever going to become mainstream, because no one's going to notice them, and it's going to have a huge tax on the computing power.
Yeah, even games that come out now in 2017, you get close to a tree or something, and you can see how there's like flat assets in there that you just you don't notice because you're far away usually.
Right.
But you get close to like a certain rock or a certain asset in the game, it looks flat and it just kind of follows the camera. But since you're not usually supposed to be in this area, you don't notice.
And that's a perfect point regarding that situation where it's almost like, and that's I think what makes open world games so hard to do, because you can technically go anywhere. So it's all the assets have to be up to snuff, or someone's going to walk into a building 20 minutes in the game and go, wow, this looks like crap. I bet you the rest of this game is terrible too.
Well, when you're designing a game, you only have to make it look real what the player's going to see.
Right. But in an open world game, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with that becoming the big thing. It's everything has to look real. Right.
You can't control what the player is anymore, because it's basically default anymore that a big game is open world. Because I see ads on Facebook and such all the time. This is like a huge open world game coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically every game that's semi-popular.
Even Warframe is adding open world to it. It's decently popular. Well, it's on the Xbox and PS4 as well, but on PC, it's basically Space Ninjas. It's actually pretty fun. I haven't played a whole lot, but you would basically do missions. Okay, I'm gonna go here and do this mission, and you would run through this almost like Halo, where it's not linear, but it's not fully open either. You have a contained area you're in, but now they're going open world. So,
which maybe they should change how they word that from open world to something else, because it's really nice to not be confined to a thin line the whole game. But it also doesn't have to be like go in every direction for miles kind of a game. It's that freedom that to not be in this confined area that makes those games better. So that is an improvement, but maybe it doesn't have to always be worded as open world. They might like
maybe like free movement or something like that.
Yeah, free movement would be nice.
But that makes it sound like it's a gameplay element as opposed to this, the type of game that it is.
Yeah, open world is just the word that they
Buzzword.
Adopted to use, and now we're stuck with it.
Yep, it's buzzwords again. We should have a whole talk about buzzwords and how they're bad because it traps people into these ideas. and then
Right.
ask someone who's making the content, you have to stick with that idea or the person's going to be mad. I mean, look at the backlash that happened with Suicide Squad. The Joker was in a bunch of trailers. Was he in the movie for like 4 minutes? People were mad.
No, I didn't see it.
Well, right, but I don't know. We'll have to ask Paul because I think he saw it. But it's, yeah, you basically trap yourself into this, and it limits your creativity, and I'm assuming, some of these people are at least decently creative working on this stuff, although I'm sure most of them are quite exceptional at it. But now you're saying, okay, well, you have this box that you're kind of trapped in because guess what? Advertising said open world. Oh, shoot. Kind of like what happened with No Man's Sky, but not on that sort of level where they just started throwing stuff out there and then...
Didn't deliver.
Well, not even didn't deliver, but there was just a lot of stuff that they had to cut out and whatnot to get their launch. I mean, they've started adding stuff back in. It's never going to be what they promised. But they have done at least a halfway decent job of putting in stuff that they promised would be there. There's base building. It's kind of bare bones right now, but they said that would be in there. And so you have this. I mean, they're going to have to add stuff to this game for a while. Hello Games, I think, is a developer. They'll never be able to release anything ever again, at least under that name.
Goodbye, Geeks.
Oh, so that's actually stop, because that's a perfect segue, because goodbye, Essos. Hello, Westeros. Daenerys is on her way. That was a perfect segue. Actually, it was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Yeah, she's on her way. I wonder which faction. She's probably gonna join up with one of the characters. I'm assuming. I'm gonna estimate Jon Snow as her sort of ally when she lands, but I really have no idea.
Did you just say she's probably going to join up with one of the characters? I fucking
Well,
hope.
I mean, I don't think she's gonna just take over Westeros solo, plus her however many horde of Dothraki, the second sons and
The
whatnot.
Tyrells, isn't she going to become buddies with them? Because isn't that who?
Well, I guess she already is with the Greyjoys.
The
Kind of.
Martells, right?
They're using their ships, but
Oh yeah, well the Tyrell. Well, that's going to be kind of cool. Didn't Varys go and talk to the Tyrells before he? I mean, it's literally like the last shot of season 6. But didn't he go and talk to the Tyrells first?
Oh, I don't remember.
I was under the impression that he did, and because I don't know because most of them are dead. The only one that's alive is the grandma, Olenna, because her
Well,
son's
she's
dead.
the important one.
Well, right, yeah, but it would be kind of cool to see her work to try to get the Tyrells and the Martells to not hate each other. That actually would be pretty decent, actual decent drama that you don't have to manufacture. That's just sort of the way they are because they obviously have hated each other for.
Yeah, Game of Thrones is known for its generally subpar drama.
No, but I mean because you're getting to the end. It's hard to keep coming up with stuff that you haven't done already, but doesn't feel forced at the same time. Like, oh, we're gonna. And there's some times where I think the show has kind of done stuff like that. Not where it's bad, but where you can kind of tell where they're forcing a particular thing to happen. But now you have these two families that despise each other that, based on what I've seen so far, looks like they're both going to rally behind the same person. So it's going to be kind of cool to see. I guess I don't know who's left for the Martells because Oberyn's dead. His lady friend, what's her name? What's his girlfriend's name? The one that killed Doran. I mean, there's no
Honestly,
real.
we don't know.
nothing's coming up.
I know it's been a while. I've been going back and watching season 6 because I don't have enough time to watch all of them at this point. And
It's hard to remember every name in that show.
It is. Elliot
Well,
was
if you think about it, speaking of families that hate each other, rallying behind the same guy, the Starks and Lannisters both fought with Robert in his rebellion.
right, but they didn't start hating each other until after.
I sort of assume they had a long-standing sort of rivalry.
But why? They're so far away from each other. What would be?
No,
I mean,
They're not. There's one bay between them.
Between the Starks and the Lannisters?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me look at my map here.
You go to the Westerlands, you just sail north a bit.
Well,
There's
you'd
a-
have to sail. You'd have to sail through the Iron Islands. Good luck. But it's. I mean, it's a little bit different than them literally being physically right next to each other. I mean, there's one bay, but it's a big bay, and there's a whole.
I mean, it's like Iron Man's Bay, right? It's one end is the Rills, and the other end is the Westerlands.
Right, but again, we're talking about two people that are. I mean, physically touching each other versus there being more than that space in between them. And on top of that, the North is fairly isolated anyways.
Yeah.
But no, I've never felt that that they actually. I don't really think the North had anything against any kind of particular family. Obviously, aside from the Targaryens after their whole spat, and now they do right after the rebellion. They do with the way Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister kind of took stuff over. You know, with Ned and whatnot. Obviously, he hasn't really liked them. So that sort of this happened right along with the show, whereas this is something that's going to be. I mean, a deep-seated sort of hatred. But that's going to be kind of cool to see how they work together or don't work together. Assuming that actually happens. I very well could be wrong. It has been a while. But...
So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of things happening with Xerxes being on the throne now, like a rebellion or something.
Xerxes?
Question her legitimacy.
You mean Cersei?
Yeah, Cersei.
It's not Persian.
Yeah, because she blew up, what's
Great
that?
Sept.
Thank you. Great Sept of Baylor. So yeah, well, we don't know. I don't know if it's going to be something that she says she did or if people figure it out. I wouldn't be surprised if someone eventually figures it out. But yeah, you have several hundred dead people. Plus her son killed himself over it, so...
Was that religious leader in that building
Yes.
at the time?
Yep. he
So-
was in there.
The High Sparrow.
High Spirit,
Yeah,
yep.
that's it.
He got
What
whacked.
were all the main characters that died in that explosion? It was
High
Taylor-
Sparrow, Marjorie,
Right.
Loras. Wasn't Marjorie's dad in there?
Yeah.
He was, I think, but I didn't think
Well-
he played that big a role the whole show.
No, but as a character, he's important because he's the leader of House Tyrell. At least he was until he was dead. So, as a character, he was important, but as a character within the show, you're right, he was kind of not really. But that's going to be a big deal because, I mean, you killed the leader of House Tyrell. Who else was in there?
That's all that rings a bell to me
Yeah.
is those.
But
those
obviously,
few.
you can basically credit Tommen's death to it as well.
I was gonna say, yeah,
he jumped
he's
out the window.
he was in there too.
That I did not expect that to happen at all. Like I
That was
thought
a shock.
I thought they were just leaving it, like to just see the destruction. And when he sets the crown down, I thought he was gonna go, say, all right, fuck this shit, I'm out. But nope, he jumped out the window. And that does continue the streak of there being a king that dies in every single season. Because you have Robert in the first one, you have Renly in the second, you have Robb in the third. Who was in the fourth? Is that when... No, Balon doesn't die in the fourth season, does he?
No, I think
No.
he died more recently.
Yeah, he dies in the fifth one. Stannis... Because, Stannis dies at the end of the fifth season as well. Who dies in the fourth one, then? Oh, that's when Joffrey dies. Jesus. It's been so long ago, I totally forgot. I mean, the one everybody thought was the king. So, yeah, that's 6... Wow. It's a lot of
Joffrey
kings.
seems like so long ago now.
It does.
And
And
everybody
it's-
wanted him dead for so long.
I know, right? Boy, he's been dead almost half the show. Once this season's over, he'll have been dead for half of the show. And it's weird because it seems like you look at the Bucks and it seems like the first 3 are kind of like almost like the intro, and then everything after that feels almost like the sequel. It's weird. Same thing
Now
with-
that Ramsay Bolton is dead too, are they going to add a new love to hate character?
Oh yeah, they well.
Because it
maybe-
seems like they've always had at least one of those.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something happens with Dany, because they've, I mean, her dad being mad has been a huge part of a lot of the stuff that's happened both in the show, not so much yet, but it's been mentioned several times, and of course in the books. So I honestly am not going to be surprised if there's something with her where she ends up dying or getting killed by someone because she starts to go crazy. I mean, that's sort of like my bold prediction that I don't necessarily think would happen, but wouldn't surprise me if it did. Is something like that occurring.
Littlefinger could be the love-to-hate character.
Yeah, but you already hate him here. He doesn't have the same sort of vibe that Joffrey or Ramsay had.
He's just kind of a little annoying at
he's
times. He's not super easy to hate. He's just sort of a nuisance at times.
Like,
he's
Joffrey wasn't conniving. He just straight up had people killed. Ramsay just straight up killed people. Littlefinger...
His flag was a person hanging on an X upside down. I mean...
Yeah, really.
He's a bad dude.
Skin the guy.
Yeah. So, he's a bit more... I mean, he's probably more interesting to watch, at least for some aspects, with the way he plays people off of each other. But when it comes to actually being fun to, who's he going to kill this time? No, not really, because he killed Liza, which was a big deal. But,
yeah. I mean, with Bolton
anyway, so.
And even Joffrey, I was always wondering what shitty things he's going to do next. And then
you don't do that.
I don't see that with Littlefinger or
Right.
other characters like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he killed that one lady in the Vale, but...
You mean Lysa?
That wasn't... I didn't think that was too bad. She was kind of annoying anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Ramsay and Joffrey are killing people we liked. Littlefinger hasn't. If he were to do something bad to someone we care about... Okay, that's different. Does he kill Lord Aaron? Okay, that's good. I fucking hate him. He's annoying. So he needs to kill someone we care about. If he drops Sansa for whatever reason, alright. Then you can hate him.
I mean, isn't he responsible for Jon Snow being alive right now? Or
kind of. I think it's...
I guess Sansa's a little more...
Well, he came there for her, obviously. But yeah, he's sort of...
Sansa had the power to do so through his actions, I guess, but
yeah,
it was really more Sansa that came in on that Battle of the Bastards than
right.
him.
And it's funny because the episode I just watched, she almost killed him. Well, not kill. She would have had Brienne kill him, but
yeah, I remember that was a pretty good scene. I like that.
Hold the door! Hold the door! Oh man, that still got to me. I was like, oh, it's coming, and then it's like, oh, that's terrible. So we'll see, because it looks like Bran now is going to be playing a bit bigger role, because he was not in Season 4 at all, wasn't it? And then he shows up in Season 5.
Barely, if
any.
Yeah, but now it seems like he's actually going to have a huge role in the story, because...
I hope it gets interesting, because when I watched him before, I just kind of sat through those scenes, just waiting for them to be over. But then... In
Season 6? Or 5?
Well,
yeah, 5 was boring. 6?
Up to.
We saw the Tower of Joy, which was a huge deal. That was a huge deal. We saw the Hodor hold the door. That was a huge
that was
deal.
getting interesting. But up to that point, it was kind of just a drag whenever he was on screen.
It's the same thing with Arya being in Bravos. Like that. I mean, she has to do something. You can't just not have her character be in there. But... You have this weird thing where I'm assuming this training is supposed to take much longer, and she's already done with it. So that's kind of always, and I think part of that comes from the fact that when he was writing these books, he originally planned that not originally planned, but once he got going on it, after the third book, there was going to be a 5-year time skip. But you have all the stuff that's set up to where you kind of need a payoff in less time than that. 5 years ago, in a Storm of Swords, Robb got killed. Now see what's happened since then. People are mad. You can't do things like that. So I think that's kind of part of the problem that's running into that as well. And we'll see how it's handled in the book, because we're way past the books now. Way past them. And there's a lot of stuff with the Hodor thing that was not even hinted at in the books. I'm assuming that was the plan in the books. It'd be really hard for that to be different, especially since it makes sense.
I mean, they're still going to be pretty much the same story.
The War of the North.
Going to show it differently.
The war in the north in the books is definitely going to be different.
Oh, yeah. But we know Stannis is going to lose, which is kind of obvious reading about it because he's way outnumbered and just all kinds of, he's... They talk about him being this good battle commander, but there's nothing in the books he does that... I mean, aside from taking advantage of Melisandre, that seems to be any kind of a smart decision. Like, I get it, he either can wait out the winter, which can be years, or he can charge now. Well, you probably should have waited because you're gonna fucking die.
Well, in the books, they didn't anticipate there being a snowstorm.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is, but winter's
Sort of
coming.
early.
I mean, right, the winter did come a bit earlier than normal. And I think actually there's a chapter with Jaime Lannister that kind of hints at that as well. But you also gotta go. But even if it doesn't happen early, you go, okay, how long is it actually gonna take him to retake the North? I mean, this isn't just something where he kills Bolton at the time and goes, oh look, everything's fine now. No, there's gonna be a bit more to it than that, and it's gonna take a while.
Right. What Stannis really should have done was just taken some weaker forts that he could have held for the winter and waited it out, like you said. I mean,
Yep.
he would obviously been pretty out in the open if he waited out in camps like he was, but he would have been better off if he just got a foothold somewhere weaker in the north and set up.
Yeah, but the problem with sitting at the wall is, I mean, I think by now a lot of the characters that have been involved in that have to know some shit's going down. That, you don't want to be there. It's not sort of this place where you send robbers to kill some wildlings every couple of weeks or whatever. No, there's something else is going on there. And I think a lot of characters have realized that, and it's kind of like, all right, well, let's not sit here. But there's tons of places. I'm trying to think of who would some families that he could stay with. Because remember, he doesn't have a lot of people. The only thing it would be is if they run out of food. Because I don't know how well, I would assume the Northerners would be pretty good at stocking up for the winter, since that's kind of like their whole thing is, oh, we're tough.
Not when there's thousands of extra soldiers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If they could have fed them all, because you have years without there being anything aside from stuff you can buy from the south. Maybe, honestly, maybe he should have just gone. He really should have just, let Renly have his little thing, because we obviously saw that Renly didn't like fighting or whatever. Let Renly just say, all right, yeah, dude, I'll follow you, whatever. And then Renly was like, oh, this sucks. Here, Stannis, you can be the leader, and I'll be, the second in command or whatever. And then everything would have been fine. They would have crushed the Lannisters, and Robb would still be here, and they could all fight the Walkers together.
Too bad Stannis is manipulative in that sense.
But it's not even manipulative. It's, he killed his brother like that.
Sure it is. It's manipulative to just play along with your little brother. And then, knowing that he'll eventually get bored of whatever he's doing.
But you told him. It's not like you're setting him up to do this. You're saying, dude, look, you're not going to like this. I'm supposed to be in charge. And your liver's like, oh, no, I'm going to go tell mommy. Kind of thing. I mean, obviously he didn't do that, but it's just like, all right, fine, whatever. Here, lesson in hard knocks kind of thing. I don't know if that counts as being manipulative. Because, he told him, like, no, dude, I'm the right one. I'm the true heir. But it's also not really fitting with his character either, and it's easy to look at things in hindsight and how things would have gone.
Speaking of the White Walkers, I wonder if they're going to be south of the wall in this season.
I think that's going to be... Well, my prediction is Dany is going to get to Westeros by the end of episode 2. Wouldn't even surprise me if by episode 1 she's there, but by the end of episode 2, she will have her fucking sandals on some sand or dirt or a plank that's connected to Westeros somewhere.
Well,
and I
if
think
this was an RPG, we could definitely expect them to be attacked at sea.
No, I don't think that's going to happen here with this, especially with the huge-ass fleet they have. Granted, the Dothraki are no good on the water, but they have, again, I'm assuming
There's so many boats.
I wouldn't be surprised if probably by the midway or maybe 2/3 of the way through, the White Walkers haven't gotten past, because it's been mentioned again about how they can't, and then we saw the Night King was actually able to enter Bloodraven's, not Bloodraven's, Jesus, the Third Eye Raven's little hideout there with some magic trickery, so we'll see. Maybe he can break it in that way and get to Westeros, because that's kind of been a big thing, is them, not being able to get through. Right, that's one of their things.
I'm excited for the battles. I bet they're going to be of huge scale now because they seem to be getting progressively bigger. I mean, there were sieges, but they didn't really have the budget maybe to show it for
Well, you're gonna
what
have
it was.
you're gonna have dragons in here a lot now, I think too, because she's just gonna go. I really think she's just gonna go balls to the wall. Look, you either bow to me as your ruler, or I'm gonna burn you down. Oh, how are you gonna do that? My fucking dragons. Oh, okay. Yes, Massa. But yeah, it's well, I think this season's gonna be shorter. I thought I read somewhere it's gonna be 7 episodes. So assuming they spend the same amount of money, that's 30 or 40 extra percent they can spend each episode that they didn't have before. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like you said, bigger battles, more stuff going on with that. Because George said the ending, he would like to see the ending as like a movie. So I'm assuming it's a huge sort of battle, probably everybody that's left versus the White Walkers and their whites.
One defining battle. It's a quote from The Last Kingdom.
Oh,
Using that word.
that's sort of my prediction, is by the middle of this, the White Walkers, if they're not through to past the wall, they're at least going to know how to do it. Because I think, I think this one's only 7 episodes, and the next one's might be the full 10. So you have.
Really? It's only going to be.
That's what I think.
7?
I could very well be wrong. I can't remember.
I mean, they've always been 10, haven't they?
Yep. Actually,
Huh.
let me check it up here real quick.
I wonder if the White Walkers are going to get. I mean, just how south are they going to go by the end of the show? If they're going to get maybe to King's Landing or what? And that I'm assuming that they're going to wrap up this throne ordeal, and then the aftermath is going to be with the White Walkers, or maybe it's all going to be at the same time. I don't know. That might be the Game of Thrones way to do it.
Maybe they'll die. If I can.
I mean, wouldn't that be something if the White Walker King just sat on the Iron Throne at some point in the show, did his little arm race thing, and raised all the fallen soldiers?
According to Wikipedia, there's 7 episodes. 3 have titles and like descriptions, summaries, whatever you want to call it.
Synopses.
Thank you. I haven't read that, obviously, but they're there, and they have 3 titles. I mean, the titles kind of tell you stuff, but it's not really. I mean, it's called a Game of Thrones. What do you think it's about? People playing this game called Thrones. But yeah, this one, it is only going to be 7 episodes, so we'll see what happens with that. Again, might end up being good because they'll have more money to spend per episode.
Yeah, which it might be why they did it, just so they could pack more into each.
But Bull predict, and there's a lot of stuff that they can cut out. I mean, there's a lot of scenes you go, okay, you can probably shorten this up or whatever. And it feels like sometimes they do it to kind of pad the runtime or get the 10 episodes in. Whereas now,
Sometimes, yeah.
now they won't have to because you have 7. Even assuming the next one's 10, that's still 3 less episodes than what you kind of originally thought you had.
So each episode's about an hour, so 3
Roughly.
hours less in the season.
Yeah. And
A
we'll
lot
see.
can happen in 3 hours in a TV show.
Well, I thought I read somewhere that one of these first 3 is going to be like 80-something minutes. So you're talking
So
about...
I thought, yeah, they might be a little longer.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, we obviously don't know. I don't really want to know. I don't really want to know. I just want to see it, and I'm not. I was on the Westworld subreddit while watching Westworld, and people figured out stuff, and it just kind of ruined some of it because like, oh, okay, well now I already know what's gonna happen. 2 or 3 episodes later, so definitely not doing that.
That whole show clean, and it was great.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, I didn't have everything ruined because I kind of figured out after a while, oh, wait, these people are telling me stuff. But it did not ruin, but sort of figured things out.
When season 2 of that come out?
I think next spring. Because it's I think what they're doing is they're going to air it with the last season of Game of Thrones to help use it as like a segue to get people to go from Game of Thrones to this. Because they have at least 5 seasons, and it looks like they're going to be about a year and a half in between. So they'll have at least 4 or 5 years of this being sort of like their main show. But they've also announced that they're doing at least prequel stuff for Game of Thrones, possibly sequel stuff as well. Not a whole lot's been said about that yet, but that would be cool. I'm super into this. I wish George would finish the fucking books. So
that's kind of talking about like how franchises are taking off.
Yeah.
Now, which
That's
could be
a
something
whole
to talk
nother.
about next time.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. Because this is it. This is the end. Bold prediction. So yes, the White Walkers will be past the wall, or at least know how to get past the wall by the middle of this season, and then some shit's gonna go down after that. That's my big prediction. What about you, Zach?
Well, yeah, I figured that Daenerys gonna team up with someone, and then they're possibly saving Jon Snow from a White Walker attack because they could just burn them all with their dragons. I mean, that would be cool. Well, maybe about halfway, a quarter through this season.
What about you, Andrew?
I have no idea.
Wow.
One thing.
Just to guess. I'm not telling you what will happen. I want you to guess what you think will happen.
Okay. How about Jon Snow dies again?
Ooh, I like that. That's bold. It's got some real balls behind it.
Maybe
Well,
the
traditionally, kings in the north don't last long.
yeah.
That's true. So those are our predictions. Obviously, we will do every podcast we do for the next 7 weeks is going to at least be partially based around the previous night's episode of Game of Thrones. Possibly the whole thing, depending on what actually happens. I'm assuming there's going to be something big this season that's going to take at least an hour to talk about. So, but that's something to look forward to, assuming you like Game of Thrones. If you don't, start liking it. Because if you don't, you're wrong. I have been Whoosh.
I've been Zach.
I will have been Andrew.
And this is Geeks a Week podcast. We're recording this on July 9th, so probably be up tomorrow, so you can listen to us in the past. Thanks for listening.